Welcome back to Consider Life. This time we have a question that comes from Gaius Sater said, listening to you, I found myself thinking about the possibility of us sitting in heaven or after the resurrection. Have some thoughts to share about that. And I promised this person that I would get back to this in the new year. And so this is that video. So remember last time we talked about the pleasure centers of the body, the soul, and the spirit. This is going to carry us into that realm of the spirit where the soul is in the presence of what's called the Beatific vision. The Beatific vision is when by the grace of God, the human soul, by whatever power of perception, sees the divine essence as it is in itself. Right? We're not able to do that here. Even Jesus, although a physical representation of God on earth, was not the Beatific vision. The Beatific vision is basically the human soul as directly as metaphysically possible, beholding God as he is in himself, right? And in order to get at this in the quickest way possible, I'm just going to walk through several quotes from a guy named Brian Shanley. This is his article, Beyond Libertarianism and Compatibilism, Thomas Aquinas on Created Freedom.
Nerd alert!
Good work, boy. Egghead likes his bookie work.
Homer!
Just tucking him in.
So that's enough for you to find the reference points, and the nerds can take it from there. After talking about the kind of appetite that plants have and animals have. So for Aristotle and then Aquinas, there are three kinds of living souls. Plant souls have what's called nutritive powers, whereby they drive their roots into the earth and they produce fruit and things like that. But they don't have sensation. Right? Plants are insensate, as opposed to animals who pursue their goods, not just by their nutritive powers, but also by sensation. They're able to move around, and they're able to pursue by instinct these kinds of goods: copulation, feeding, predation, things like that. So having gone through these other types of appetites in these lower orders, Shanley comes to the intellectual or rational animal of the human. A third kind of appetite is characteristic of intellectual beings. Because their substantial form is characterized by an immaterial intellect capable of grasping the entire range of being, their striving for self-perfection is not restricted in its range to only certain kinds of actions regarding certain kinds of objects. Rather, they are able to engage through knowing any object that is possibly perfective or good, and so desire it in a conscious way. Intellectual beings, therefore, have an unrestricted appetite for their own good, as known. That appetite is called will. So Aquinas calls the will the rational appetite. As rational creatures, it belongs to the nature of human beings to desire, through will, the human good as known. So what Shanley is saying here is that because humans are rational animals, and that rationality is the ability to understand the natures of things, the will pursues the known good. And in another video, we talked about how the intellect judges among kinds of goods. So moral goods, pleasurable goods, useful goods. And then because the will is a rational appetite, it's an appetite for the known good, the will simply in its disposition pursues or aims at whatever the intellect judges as a good under whatever description. So Shanley goes back to say, finally, and most importantly, Aquinas argues that there is an existing good that perfectly finalizes and completes human nature and its rational appetite, that is God. The natural desire for the beatifying good is de facto an ordering to God, even though most people do not recognize this. Thomas argues that the only intelligible object that could satisfy the intellect's natural desire for knowledge would be a vision of the essence of the first cause of things. Likewise, the only object that could satisfy the will's desire for the absolutely perfect good is God. By nature, then, we desire God. Even at the level of conscious choice, we deny his existence. All human striving for the perfective good is an implicit yearning for God. If we were actually to see God in all his perfect goodness, we would will him necessarily and naturally, and not as an object of free choice. So what Shanley is saying there, and he'll complete this in the final quotation, is that here below, as we might say, apart from the beatific vision of God, all other goods in and of themselves are finite, right? And I think this makes sense of the popular God-shaped hole description of the human's yearning for this thing or that thing and being dissatisfied or unsatisfied with the things of this world. And C.S. Lewis famously makes this argument that this dissatisfaction with the things of this world, this hunger for something more, is itself at least an indication that there is this sort of infinite good that the human is pointed at, right, naturally. But Shanley's point here is this. So the question was, how can we be free and sinless in heaven? And the answer is here. Going back, once a person enters into the beatific vision, the will's nature has come to rest in its proper object, the infinite good, precisely because its nature is made to find completion in the infinite good that is God. The will is not necessitated with respect to any other object. This side of the beatific vision, no object can compel and quiet the will's orientation toward the good. So whether or not you fully understand or accept Aquinas' position, the question is there some sort of philosophical anthropology that matches up with revelation, scripture, that makes sense of why it is that here below we can sin, we can choose lower goods that are not God, right, like our first parents did, and why in heaven are we the same kind of creature and yet we remain sinless? Well, the answer is that, or one potential answer is the one that Aquinas gives, and that is this. Given our makeup of intellect and will, the things that satisfy the soul, the infinite original cause of our being and all being, and then the infinite perfective good that is in the beatific vision, once we see that, our soul is satisfied. And I mean that in the most metaphysically profound way possible. The human soul is unsatisfied with everything that is not God. But in the beatific vision, in the presence of the perception of the infinite good in the divine, the human soul is satisfied and really is necessitated to that. So we're actually naturally unable to turn away from or reject the perceived infinite good of God. And so that's at least one example of how it is that we can be completely free in heaven and yet sinless. In this side of eternity, we are mired in a context of spiritual warfare. And so next time we'll talk about the nature of spiritual warfare and recognizing that we are in a context of spiritual warfare. We'll talk about that next time.